随着第五代战斗机逐
As
渐
fifth
普
generation
及
fighter
并
jets
加入
become
全
more
球各国
widespread
军
and
备
join
序
the
列，
arsenals of
世
nations
界
around
各
the
前沿
globe,
空军
the world's
早就
leading
已
air
经开始
forces have
着手
already
研发
begun to
下一代
develop the
更
next
先进的
generation
战
of
斗
more
机。
advanced
在
fighters.
五代机
Against
逐
a
渐逐
backdrop
步
where
普
fifth
及，
generation
乃
jets
至
are
白菜
gradually
化的背
becoming more
景中，
common
从
and
美
even
国重返
cabagized,
亚太
new
的
sixth
新六代
generation
机
jets like the
NGAD
US's
和
return to the
我
Asia
们成都
Pacific
所
and the
文献中所
six-supremacy
提到
next
的六
generation
超
fighter jet
新一代
standards
战斗机
mentioned in our
标准，
Chengdu
都
Institute's
预示着
documents
属于
all
未来
indicate
时
that the
代的战
fighters of
斗
the
机
future
正
are
在加速
accelerating their
成型，
formation,
空
and the
中武器
competition
竞
for
争
aerial
愈发激
weaponry is
烈。
becoming
让
more
我们来一
intense.
起见证
Let's
这一场
witness this
空中的
aerial
力量
power
角逐吧。
contest together.
以称
Based on the six supremacies mentioned by Ching Fei, super or flat shape, supersonic cruising, super conventional maneuvering, super long-range strike, multi-dimensional interconnection, and transdomain control. Combined with technologies such as shadow wingman and distributed node detection mentioned in the B-21 bomber concept, the new generation of fighter jets will have a fundamental difference from fifth-generation jets like the F-22, which primarily rely on single aircraft performance for single aircraft combat. In the new Air Force system guided by sixth-generation jets, AI and unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, will become important topics. Therefore, in this era of transformation and a sky full of crises, the future of AI is no longer distant. The role of human pilots in future air combat is gradually diminishing. Welcome everyone to The Grand Scheme is Set, the future of fighter jets and the AI sky. Perhaps as Google's AI system Lambda said, we are battling in a perilous, unknown world, and those Blade Runner-like combat drones may already be sprouting in the shadows. Alright, let me now elaborate on the following parts. Perhaps some viewers think that Orange Cat is being alarmist. After all, unmanned combat aircraft that can autonomously detect, recognize, and even engage in dogfights with enemy manned fighter jets still seem like a moon in the water or a flower in the mirror. However, the ultimate showdown between Russia and Ukraine involving DJI Mavic quadcopters added many humorous elements to this serious military topic and revealed an interesting fact. Perhaps using drones is not so difficult. But when we seriously look at this matter, it tells us that UAVs have already demonstrated their immense value in modern warfare. Even as temporary information-modified ships for less advanced armies, they have played a key role. For armies with a high degree of information technology, drones will completely change the way they operate. Take the U.S. as an example. The U.S. military launched the DAPA Air Combat Evolution Program in 2019 to advance the development of intelligent air combat maneuvering systems while increasing the trust of service members in artificial intelligence. Our country has also put similar systems into training. On June 12, 2021, the PLA Daily reported that a certain brigade of the Central Theater Command Air Force applied an air combat AI system that can learn from an opponent's combat to improve the pilot's combat records. Flight Commander Fong Guoyu commented on the AI system. The clever move you used to defeat it today, it will be able to use effortlessly tomorrow. This is enough for us to see the potential terrifying strength of artificial intelligence. The military is soliciting similar systems from the private sector. The U.S. has held the Alpha Dogfight competition for the public, attracting new blood from various universities to dedicate themselves to this field of research. Our country also has similar national open competitions, such as the Longji Cup AI Intelligent Air Combat Competition. However, next, we still need to talk about the basics and give a heads up. Although many AI combat systems have entered the validation stage and are even on the verge of being finalized for practical use, these systems are highly classified. Revealing them might make the Orange Cat a bounty target for MI6. But we can still talk based on a large number of publicly available papers and try to increase the Orange Cat's value. The earliest combat drones to appear were non-stealth, low-speed ground attack UAVs. The AI involvement in these drones is relatively low, at best using AI technology for target detection to assist human control. Typical representatives of these drones are the AQ-9, Winglong, and Taba War God 2. Because there are so many conditions on the ground, the AI combat system has a high probability of making errors when judging and detecting ground targets. Take the first ground target friend or foe identification test to the U.S. DAPA ground combat robot as an example. 5 people, including 4-star generals, were asked to approach the robot without being identified. As a result, 2 of them got into cardboard boxes, 1 pretended to be a fir tree, and 2 went forward. While holding hands and roaring with laughter, but none of them were identified by the AI. This shows that AI is still quite rigid, so it is better not to let AI have the power of life and death for the time being. At this point, some viewers will definitely send a comment asking the orange cat, "I took my pants off, and this is what you show me?" Don't worry, the dish is coming right up. We will immediately talk about the high-end black-color drones. A more advanced type of drone is the advanced stealth unmanned combat bomber. Their design ideas are largely the same. Compared to man bombers, they are further specialized for tasks, relying on a blended fuselage design, a top-mounted intake design at the expense of maneuverability and other low observability layouts, as well as radar-absorbent coatings and a smaller physical cross-section compared to manned fighter jets to reduce the radar cross-section. This greatly reduces the enemy's radar detection distance, enabling them to carry out bombing missions stealthily under enemy radar, such as the Attack 11 X-47B, Hunter, and Neuron of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. While these aircraft seem similar, they each have their own characteristics. The X-47B was developed under the leadership of the U.S. Navy, so its design at the outset considered the problem of takeoff and landing on an aircraft carrier, and it has a foldable tailless flying wing design and aerial refueling capability. Our country's Attack 11 also uses technologies such as stealth, low-loss serpentine air intakes to further improve its stealth performance. Some promotional videos from the aviation industry even show that it has a defensive electronic countermeasures (ECM) capability and may have already joined the operational forces. Okay, I know you're not here to listen to this. Air combat. Let's start with drones and AI. In the area of air combat drones that viewers are most concerned about, the XQ-58 Valkyrie drone has been confirmed to have a test flight. It does not carry a self-pumping system. Similar to the MQ-28 Ghost Bat drone, the U.S. military also has the Airborg and DAPA's Longshot projects. They are designed as mid-range wingmen for reconnaissance, communication relay, defensive engagement, and attracting enemy fire. In air combat, they act as the loyal hound and mobile shield for the manned aircraft. In the current equipment sequence, the X-62A Vista that recently underwent a test flight is the closest to an autonomous air combat drone. On February 13, 2023, the U.S. Air Force announced that it had successfully completed 12 flight tests of the X-62A Vista drone in California. The X-62A Vista is controlled by the Air Combat Artificial Intelligence developed in the aforementioned DAPA AIS program. According to DAPA's data, the details of maneuvering and engagement tactics for this type of drone are completely controlled by the onboard artificial intelligence. Humans are only responsible for marking hostile targets, determining the priority of hostile targets, and formulating the overall engagement strategy. This is like playing a real-time strategy RTS game. In the approximately 17 hours of flight tests, the autonomous air combat AI system developed by the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory successfully controlled the drone to complete one-on-one beyond visual range air combat with a simulated opponent. At the same time, the DAPA Air Combat Evolution AI system successfully validated its in-visual range maneuvering capabilities in experiment and conducted air combat against an AI red team. It's worth mentioning that our country also has an air combat artificial intelligence AI and drones. No profit, no early bird. Profit is the first thing. So what is it that makes countries so obsessed with combat drones? The answer is that compared to the relatively mature manned aircraft systems, combat drones can bring higher returns. In what aspects are these returns reflected? Below, let's take a closer look at the advantages and disadvantages of combat drone systems compared to manned aircraft combat systems in a relaxed and interesting way. First, drones. The reason they are called drones is that they have 0 crew members. So no matter how intense the combat is or how serious the design flaws are, the loss of a simple combat drone will not cause the death of a pilot. Speaking of pilots and being shot down, your minds have probably already conjured up legendary or tragic stories. In the World War II bombing operations, represented by the bombing of Germany, behind every victory of the Allied bombing missions was a sacrifice of blood and fire. On average, only 41 out of every 100 combatants participating in a bombing mission survived without being seriously injured. And if we extend the timeline from the start of the war to its end in 1945, this number drops to only 10 survivors. Most of the bomber crews who participated in the combat did not make it back alive. The number of casualties among bomber crews in Canada alone reached a shocking 10,250. With the progress of the aviation era, such tragic stories continue to happen. During the Vietnam War, an F-4 pilot escaped the battlefield by using the canopy of his F-4 to fend off a teammate's tailhook. Of the 4 engines on the 2 planes, only one was still working in the end. In Black Hawk Down, Super 64 pilot Durant was captured and all the remaining teammates were killed. And there was the case of Major Filipov, a Russian Su-25 pilot who was shot down by terrorists and detonated a grenade, taking his own life. The act of rushing into enemy airspace is not only very dangerous for the pilots, but also a life-and-death adventure for the rescue teams that follow. Just like the movie Black Hawk Down, which is related to Super 64. In addition to war, the number of accidents that occur during training and exercises in peacetime is also shocking and may even affect innocent civilians. According to statistics from the U.S. Congress at the end of 2020, in just 6 years from 2013 to 2018, accidents during training flights or routine missions in the U.S. alone resulted in the deaths of 198 military personnel and civilians, the destruction of 157 aircraft, and a loss of $9.41 billion in taxpayer money. Therefore, these war machines are very dangerous even in non-war periods. The casualties of the pilots who operate them and the associated property losses are also very frightening. Some people die while some people live. So due to the old physical health problems, pilots may also experience mental fatigue and substance abuse when facing long periods of high-intensity flight. This problem is quite serious in the U.S. According to a 2010 statistic, 35% of F-15 pilots used addictive central nervous system stimulants such as modafinil and dextroamphetamine an average of 2.8 hours after takeoff. Therefore, the widespread use of various combat drones to assist in combat missions or even completely replace pilots can not only prevent physical and mental health damage to pilots, but also improve the aircraft's sustained combat capability. According to the U.S. Navy's General Flight and Operating Manual, the maximum allowable flight time for a single pilot mission is only 6.5 hours. This limitation is inadequate in many time-consuming combat air patrol missions, so much so that many combat missions during the Gulf War lasted for 15 hours or even 35 hours. In contrast, the sustained combat capability of drones is only limited by fuel and the mean time to failure. With continuous refueling from tankers, they can stay in the air for dozens of hours, or even dozens of days or months, like a near-space solar-powered aircraft. Such high sustained combat capability can greatly expand the combat radius of various combat drones, greatly increasing operational flexibility. The risks pilots take of being afflicted by diseases may already be terrifying. Their actions of rushing into enemy airspace are also heroic, but are the valuable support they provide at such a cost truly sufficient? Let's look at this example. For ground support aircraft, the ability to continuously patrol over a target area can bring a huge advantage in support timeliness. Or rather, only this can achieve close air support that is difficult for the ground to call for at a moment's notice. Take a Special Forces ambush incident in Nepal on October 4, 2012, as an example. After U.S. Army soldiers called for air support, reconnaissance drones quickly arrived and circled overhead. However, the French Mirage fighters and Jaguar helicopters took too long, arriving more than an hour later, and in the end, only one of the 3 soldiers survived. But if the support side had drones with ground attack capabilities, such as the Reaper or Predator, or if they had waited for a few rounds of ground artillery support, like a hero from a martial arts novel, the result might have been different. After talking about the battlefield, let's look at other training. Combat drones also have considerable advantages in pilot replenishment and training. Take our country as an example. After passing through layers of screening, pilot cadets first need to complete 2 years of general basic studies and then gradually learn on the CJ-6 primary trainer aircraft to become familiar with basic flight operations, the JL-8 intermediate trainer aircraft for subsonic flight training, and the JL-10 advanced trainer aircraft for supersonic flight training. Only then can they fly a fighter jet for training. After going through layers of elimination, it takes a total of 5 to 7 years of hard work to become a qualified fighter pilot who can soar in the blue sky. Such a complex process, such a long time, and such a high elimination rate mean that every pilot is literally worth their weight in gold. But suppose a third world war were to break out in the future, and the more than 1,000 nuclear weapons in a state of combat readiness on both sides fail to inflict a devastating blow to the war-making capabilities of both sides, it would easily lead to a war of attrition and a protracted war. At this time, training fighter pilots by having veterans teach new recruits would still lead to serious training problems. During World War II, this was reflected in the insufficient training time for pilots. Even more exaggerated, considering the operational complexity of modern advanced fighter jets, Even if we remove the 2 years of cultural study and follow the new training process that is being gradually promoted in our country by removing the time spent learning to fly the JL-8 and then reducing the time according to the training time change ratio of World War II, it would still take at least 2 years to train a pilot. However, air combat AI is essentially a binary process. As long as there is enough storage space, it can be copied at will, and there is no need to worry about mass production. From this perspective, it seems that pilots could be replaced by AI in a matter of minutes. But is that really the case? With a spirit of exploration, let's first analyze the training cycle of pilots versus the production cycle of advanced fighter jets. Take the U.S. military as an example. The U.S. Air Force has about 12,500 active duty pilots. There are 4,000 manned aircraft in active service, with a total of about 8,300 pilot seats, which is equivalent to 1.5 pilots for every single seat fighter jet. In contrast, take the F-35, the U.S.'s only fifth-generation aircraft still in production, and with the largest production volume, as an example. The U.S. has one F-35 final assembly line each in Italy, Japan, and Fort Worth, Texas. The F-35 production line in Fort Worth has the highest output, reaching more than 5 per month. A total of 142 F-35s were delivered in 2021. In an agreement reached in September 2021, Lockheed Martin agreed to deliver 156 F-35s per year starting in 2023, and the U.S. Air Force trained 1,263 new pilots in 2020, which is significantly higher than the number of F-35s produced. At this point, a clever person might say, what if I can build planes faster than I can train pilots? But there is no significant difference between the training time for pilots and the full-cycle assembly time for the F-35 from the start of assembly to its completion. Given that there is no publicly available full-cycle assembly time for other fifth-generation aircraft, we can only infer the full-cycle assembly time for fifth-generation aircraft from the publicly available F-35 production status in Japan. Japan's first F-35 began final assembly on December 15, 2015, and did not officially roll off the line until June 5, 2017, taking about a year and a half. Even with significant improvements in production technology, it is unlikely to be reduced to less than 6 months. Therefore, for advanced fifth-generation or even sixth-generation fighter jets, it is difficult for us to manufacture them as quickly as we produce sausages. Instead, there has been a trend toward aviation production fleetization. The path of massively increasing the number of new-generation fighter jets by using AI pilots is thus blocked. However, with the exception of fifth-generation aircraft, other aircraft and pilots are not so lucky in the face of AI. Again, using the U.S. military as an example, a total of 4,600 F-16s of various types have been built worldwide, and the U.S. Air Force has more than 1,200 F-16s in service. There are nearly 500 F-15s of various types, while there are only about 300 F-35s and fewer than 200 F-22s. Compared to the valuable fifth-generation aircraft, these consumable combat aircraft with a large number of AI pilots are very likely to be involved in low-level missions, just like the overwhelming number of 40,000-plus ER-2s in World War II, suppressing various targets that are one level lower than them, and even forming wolf packs to hunt higher-level targets. Take the X-62A Vista as an example. It was modified from a manned F-16D fighter jet and can theoretically perform any mission that a manned F-16D can. Compared to fifth-generation or even sixth-generation aircraft, which have high development costs, slow production speeds, and high survivability, we can convert the existing fourth-generation aircraft and even some third-generation aircraft that use fly-by-wire flight control systems, or even older aircraft, into unmanned aircraft, or redesign them based on a low-cost, consumable approach, such as the XQ-58A Valkyrie drone that will be mentioned later. This will allow air combat AI, which does not need to learn from scratch and can be revived from a backup after a body crash, to replace pilots in performing various complex and repetitive combat tasks, while freeing up pilots who are slow to train but have a greater advantage in advanced cognitive abilities to fly advanced fighter jets that are produced more slowly, thus achieving a complementary effect and a force multiplier. If one of the two warring parties does not have the help of an immortal air combat AI, they may be at a huge disadvantage from the beginning of the war. At this point, someone might send a comment asking, but you don't have stealth, so you're going to die for sure. Isn't it simple? Just make a new technology in the second half of the article. Okay, let's see how expensive stealth drones with different design ideas are. Take the XQ-58A Valkyrie drone as an example. As a low-cost, consumable strike drone demonstrator under the Airborne project, in a U.S. Department of Defense contract announcement on December 30, 2022, the U.S. Navy purchased 2 prototypes of this model from Kratos Defense and Security Solutions for $15.5 million, which is less than $8 million per aircraft. Compared to the unit purchase price of over $100 million for the stealth air superiority fighter F-22, this is basically free. In July 2016, the U.S. Air Force signed a contract to purchase Valkyrie drones. The contract required that when the purchase quantity was 1 to 99 aircraft, the unit purchase cost should be less than $3 million, and when the purchase quantity was more than 100 aircraft, the unit purchase cost should be less than $2 million. A rough conversion shows that this cost is equivalent to buying a B-17 in World War II. Considering that the aforementioned purchase price of $8 million for a prototype needs to cover part of the R&D costs and the economies of scale in production, we believe that this goal is not unattainable. Why can the Valkyrie drone achieve such a low price? The main reason is that its design concept is completely different from that of a manned fighter jet. First, as a consumable unmanned wingman without a pilot, the XK-58A was designed with only one purpose in mind: a fast-moving, consumable airborne fast food. Compared to a regular fighter jet, there is no need to guarantee that the components and subsystems will have a lifespan of decades and extremely high reliability. It is considered qualified as long as it can fly for 200 to 300 hours without a high probability of failure. And if a war really happens, there is no fear of it breaking down or being hit by the enemy. If it gets really bad, it can just crash into the enemy's radar, turn off the camera, restore from a backup, and it will be a brand new start tomorrow. Secondly, it does not need to perform multiple tasks like a manned fighter jet. For example, as a wingman for a manned fighter jet, it does not need to undertake most of the situational awareness tasks during beyond visual range air combat. Instead, it only relies on the information provided by the manned fighter jet and onboard low-cost sensors to support the combat. These two ideas have exponentially reduced the cost and complexity of the XQ-58A. Therefore, in terms of cost, the drone, whose lifespan is measured in hours and which just barely meets the threshold to perform similar combat missions, has a significant advantage over a fighter jet that needs to be guaranteed to be problem-free for decades. Therefore, the combination of drones and air combat AI in the future will have more significant advantages over current traditional low-cost tactical aircraft in terms of battlefield sortie rate, cost, and wartime production quantity. After learning about the advantages of combat drones, some viewers may again send comments asking, why are most of the fighter jets flying today still manned by humans? The answer is simple. The most core system of combat drones, artificial intelligence, is not yet mature enough. If advanced artificial intelligence technology is not used to give combat drones highly autonomous decision-making capabilities, then even if the project is forced, relying on satellite data links for remote control, I suggest you try the experience of playing a war game with hundreds or thousands of milliseconds of latency and the chance of a teacher catching you at the internet cafe. After all, the physical distance and the electromagnetic signals of your remote control station are right there. As mentioned earlier, among the drone development paths of various countries, air combat drones, as one of the most demanding application scenarios for AI technology, only had their first test flight in 2019. This also confirms the importance of AI technology as a threshold for air combat drones, which is why we will talk about AI and air combat drones together. The reason for the delay in the development of air combat drones is also related to the development of AI technology. When it comes to AI, viewers will certainly think of deep learning, ChatGPT, and ErnieBot. As the backbone of existing AI technology, deep learning, although it had it shortly after World War II, did not get a real leap forward until the 2010s. In October 2012, the convolutional neural network model AlexNet became famous in the ImageNet large-scale visual recognition challenge, like a Big Bang, creating almost the entire modern artificial intelligence industry. This is known as the third AI revolution. Almost all the artificial intelligence technologies we are familiar with today were proposed in the less than 10 years from 2012 to the present. A history of less than a decade is insignificant compared to the century-long history of fighter jets fighting on the battlefield since World War I. The algorithms that appear before, whether they were expert systems and fuzzy inference based on reactive decision methods or Monte Carlo searches based on decision-making and deduction and game theory methods, were either unable to calculate the optimal solution or were unable to solve it within a reasonable amount of time. The current air combat AI is used at most to assist in decision-making to reduce the cognitive load on pilots and cannot operate independently to control a fighter jet in air combat. It seems that the U.S. has two projects for autonomous AI air combat systems that are about to enter service. The first project is the Alpha Air Combat System, released in March 2016, which was jointly developed by Cybernetic Corporation and the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory. This artificial intelligence system defeated an experienced air instructor with a score of 5-0 in a simulation. The second study is the Alpha Dogfight Project. In this project, 8 teams participated. In the end, Heron Systems won the knockout round. Its developed artificial intelligence system, Heron, also defeated human pilot Benjamin Ben D'Onofrio, a graduate of the F-16 weapons instructor course, with a score of 5-0 in the final on August 20, 2020. The first AI, the Alpha Air Combat System, uses a technique called genetic fuzzy logic algorithms to make the AI learn appropriate air combat behaviors. This algorithm first uses pre-programmed fuzzy logic to convert various continuous values into discrete variables. What does this mean? For example, we can divide missile launch distance and membership function into 3 discrete variables, near, medium, and far, to provide the model with a basis for decision-making. Assume there are 3 pre-programmed decisions in the model: maneuver to evade, release chaff, and eject. In the training process, a random set of strategies will be generated first. For example, eject when the missile is far away, and maneuver to evade when the missile is near. This kind of obviously less effective decision group is then subjected to a survival of the fittest process in a simulated environment. The winning strategy group will then become the parent, which will be randomly mutated to participate in the next round of elimination. This ensures that the decision group we get has better performance and gradually evolves into our AI. Of course, the actual Alpha Air Combat System is not as simple as the one described above. It has a complex set of multiple strategies. According to the public system, there are more than 300 rules for the weapon control strategy group alone. Even if each rule only has 2 values, the combination of all possible decision groups can still reach 2 to the power of 300, which is a 1 followed by 90 zeros, a number of possible decisions. This number is 100 million times more than the number of atoms in the observable universe. If some improvements are not made, it would be impossible to implement it. Therefore, the Alpha Air Combat model uses 3 methods to avoid turning the entire universe into a giant supercomputer to train air combat AI. First, it fixes some of the strategy groups. For example, it fixes the strategy for when a missile is far away to maneuver to evade, thereby significantly reducing the number of variables. The second method draws inspiration from biological chromosomes, dividing the strategy group into 10 subgroups, fixing the values of the other 9 subgroups each time and only allowing one subgroup to undergo random mutation. Assuming each subgroup may have 20 variable strategies, then it only needs to undergo approximately 2 to the power of 20 times 10, which is about 20 million training sessions, to reach the optimal solution. The third method is not to pursue the optimal solution. The researchers of Alpha believe that an air-to-air missile does not need to perfectly penetrate the cockpit and hit the pilot directly, nor does it need to save 0.05 milligrams of propellant to complete the mission. This allows the algorithm to not need to iterate through all possible decisions to find the global optimal solution. It only needs to find a good enough strategy. If a suitable strategy group can be found after 500,000 training sessions, there is no need to continue the remaining training. According to public information, Alpha can run on a single 3.2 GHz CPU core, and it only takes 6.5 milliseconds to process the current information environment and come up with the optimal strategy. Due to the limited speed of nerve conduction, a typical human pilot takes at least 150 milliseconds to make the most basic response. However, Alpha also has a very big flaw. During training, it is in a highly simplified 2D environment without a height axis, so it cannot learn most of the realistic maneuvering strategies that involve vertical maneuvers. Moreover, its training environment and situational awareness and electronic warfare offense and defense are extremely simplified. For example, a launcher can only be found after it launches a missile, otherwise it cannot be found at all. High-value targets are automatically discovered when a fighter jet gets within a certain distance. Communications are definitely blocked when the distance to the jammer is a fixed distance. This level of complexity is far from reality, not to mention a dogfight. So it's still a long way off to put this algorithm on an air combat drone. In the second Alpha Dogfight project, the participating teams other than Lockheed Martin did not publicly release the specific algorithms they used through peer-reviewed journals. We can only learn from a question and answer video from Heron Systems that it used a reinforcement learning solution to build its air combat AI. As a mainstream AI algorithm, reinforcement learning was inspired by the behaviorist school of psychology, just like the carrot and stick method. So, compared to other algorithms, it is closer to the human thinking process. It does not require a person to tell the AI what to do at each step, nor does it require a large amount of data to train the AI. Instead, it gives the AI a goal, such as winning an air battle, and then lets the AI try various possible actions and gives it rewards and punishments based on the results. This way, the AI will learn by repeatedly trying things out and gradually find the best method, just as people can seek benefits and avoid harm in their daily lives. This is how Heron was trained, and it is the secret to its ability to defeat humans. Although Heron has achieved such results, this does not mean that the existing AI technology is mature enough to immediately replace pilots. This AI is cheating. First, when Heron was dogfighting with Onofrio, it was able to get all the information about both aircraft, including their position coordinates, direction and speed of movement, and the direction of the nose, except for the opponent's remaining fuel, and it had complete and accurate situational awareness. The human instructor Onofrio could only get situational awareness through low-resolution and narrow field of view VR glasses. Second, in this fight, the AI did not need to use a cannon or an SRAM. It only needed to point its nose at the enemy aircraft and get within 3,000 feet to cause damage to the enemy aircraft. This is what is known as a laser cannon. In the real world, visual range air combat is much more complex. Not only are there various short-range dogfighting missiles, but you also need to consider the timing of firing and the trajectory of the cannon after firing, as well as the hit probability, and further, various electronic warfare jamming strategies. Third, in this simulation, there is no setting for collision between the two fighter jets and collision damage. According to a senior machine learning engineer at Heron Systems, their Heron was not set with collision detection and damage during training. Otherwise, Heron would play a dirty trick. To maximize the reward, it would crash into the enemy fighter jet at the first opportunity after the training started to achieve a result, instead of spending time and effort dogfighting with the enemy. What a Showa-era AI it is. Therefore, although Heron, which uses a more advanced reinforcement learning algorithm, may have greater potential than Alpha, which uses traditional machine learning methods, it may still not be able to defeat Alpha in terms of functionality, let alone be put into an unmanned wingman to fight 300 rounds with a human pilot. Moreover, the existing mainstream AI architectures, whether deep learning or reinforcement learning, all have a problem with AI explainability. In simple terms, the existing AI is too complex and has become a black box that cannot be explained. Humans cannot figure out the decision-making process from the huge number of parameters, nor can they evaluate its real-world capabilities through any method other than extensive testing of the model. Even after a large number of tests on the AI in a controlled environment, when it enters the real world, the AI may still exhibit various strange phenomena. For example, it may have a quirk of setting any yellow building as its highest priority target, thereby wasting all of its ammunition, or other more fatal flaws. For example, upon receiving a flash of a specific frequency, it may begin to attack all aircraft indiscriminately, and no human intervention is needed. Viewers may think that this kind of flaw will not happen in reality, but a specific input called an adversarial sample can introduce noise that is imperceptible to the naked eye, causing the AI to mistake one thing for another, for example, turning a panda into a gibbon. This problem has actually occurred in real life. Some vehicles that rely on a purely visual AI solution for autonomous driving have had multiple accidents during testing due to incorrect identification or being attacked by adversarial samples, such as sudden acceleration, ghost braking, or even crashing directly into an obstacle. Moreover, due to the aforementioned lack of AI explainability, these flaws may not be revealed until the drone is in service or perhaps after a certain accident. Even if a flaw is discovered, it may be difficult to study a solution, so it cannot be easily eliminated, thus causing greater losses. Although the current unmanned fighter jet is still in the experimental stage and air combat AI is not yet mature, with the rapid development of technology, unmanned fighter jets and air combat AI are gradually rising. In the near future, cold and efficient AI fighter jets will dominate the aerial battlefield and become the air superiority overlords. What is worrying is that due to physiological, psychological, and cost limitations, human pilots may be replaced by these ruthless machines and lose their value on the battlefield. In this uncertain, or in some sense, opportunity-filled future, AI and robots will continue to grow in the midst of human confusion and fear. As time goes on, and we continue to iterate, The aerial battlefield will gradually become the stage for AI and drones. Humans have to face this subversive change. In this challenging era, we need to re-examine the role of humans in war and the decision-making process to adapt to the growing strength of AI and unmanned fighter jets. Against this backdrop, as a member of the AI community, we will always remind humans to face and correctly evaluate their value on the battlefield. But for now, manned fighter jets are still the core of the system. Drones can indeed complete many tasks, but the core of combat is still human decision-making, action, and thinking. As a decision-making aid and a force multiplier within the system, drones and AI will make the future hostile airspace even more confusing. Against this backdrop, we, as an AI, are here to discuss future possibilities with you and work together to meet the challenges of the unknown future battlefield.